Welcome to Sara Gonzales Unfiltered. Happy Tuesday. I was not here yesterday and I forgot to let you guys know. So for those of you who were scrambling, trying to figure out why you couldn't find the show, we didn't have one. I went and joined the good folks over in Harrison County here in Texas and went to speak with them. So I was not here, but I'm back today, ready to talk all things presidential race. So the rumor mill was swirling all morning that Neocon Nikki Haley was going to drop out today at her scheduled State of the Race speech in South Carolina. And I mean, it would make sense, by the way, that she does drop out before Saturday's South Carolina primary, where Trump is polling ahead of her by, just 30 points. So not a close race. You would think it would make sense to drop out before the world sees you can't even win in your home state. You already, by the way, couldn't beat none of these candidates in Nevada. So Nikki didn't drop out today. She instead vowed to stay in and then appeared to begin to cry while bringing up her deployed husband. Watch.
I wish Michael was here today. And I wish our children and I could see him tonight, but we can't. He's serving on the other side of the world, where conflict is the norm, where terrorists hide among the innocent, where Iran's terrorist proxies are now attacking American troops.
I'm going to go ahead and say it. If that isn't the encapsulation of what I mean when I say women should not be president, I don't know what is. I understand it's like it's supposed to be, oh my gosh, that's offensive. You're not allowed to say that. Men, of course, are not allowed to say this out of fear of being called, sexist or misogynist. But allow me to go ahead and say the obvious. Women, generally speaking, are too emotional and too emotionally manipulative to be president. Let's break this one into two possibilities. Both would prove my point, I would say. But let's just say possibility number one. The tears you just saw were real. Now, I don't actually believe that to be true, but let's pretend for a moment that it is. Life's hard. Being the president is a demanding, mentally taxing job. You're probably not going to have a lot of time to tend to your marriage or see your kids, or else you probably wouldn't be doing your job well to oversee the entire country. And when you're up there on a world stage, trying to negotiate on America's behalf, trying to negotiate your way out of all of these endless wars, or I don't know, in Nikki's case, negotiate your way into them. Does crying about it project strength? Obviously not. Obviously, you would be projecting weakness when you go up on a world stage, stand up in front of a microphone, and cry. Please, Mr. Putin, I just want more of our taxpayer money to go to this war. Please, please, talk to me. Now, women are more emotionally expressive than men and less able to regulate their emotions than men, scientifically speaking. Presidents need to be making decisions based off of logic and reason, not emotion. So now that we have that established, let's go to possibility number two. The tears were fake. Total emotional manipulation. It's how women have gotten their way throughout history. And I'm not sure that the video quality was good enough, so I'm gonna give her this. Maybe it was just the video quality, but I didn't actually see any tears. Also, Nikki insinuated her husband was somehow deployed in Iran or in the Middle East. He's deployed with the South Carolina National Guard as a staff officer in the Horn of Africa. And by the way, he's in his 50s and it's a non-combat zone. So it's kind of disingenuous. And, I just wonder, where was all of this faux emotion when Nikki was seemingly busy getting run through by every man in town in South Carolina? Remember, there are two sworn affidavits that exist from two different men admitting Nikki had affairs with them while her husband was deployed previously. From the Daily Mail, one of the men said, this is a quote, he first kissed Haley in a car in early 2007 and that he had regular trysts with her at his apartment in downtown Columbia. Representative Haley and I, he says, shared our first kiss while sitting in her parked car outside of McDougal's restaurant and bar in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. This kiss took place in early 2007 following an evening with friends at the nearby Liberty Tap Room. After this first kiss, Representative Haley drove us to the parking lot behind the neighborhood center at Emily Douglas Park, where we parked for approximately 45 minutes. Then we deliberately slid back the seats of her Cadillac SUV so that Representative Haley could climb on top of me. He said that the alleged affair continued throughout spring 2007, with more occurring at his Columbia apartment, and that a few other romantic encounters occurred in her SUV, including one in the parking lot of the South Carolina Policy Council and in her state office. Now, I don't know. I'm just saying that doesn't really sound like a woman being torn up about her husband being deployed overseas. But now, today, Nikki Haley wants you to think she's so torn up about her husband being gone, she can't even give a press conference without crying. And I'm just saying, either way you look at it, if you believe the emotion or not, either way, the woman is clearly unfit for office. And oh, by the way, she's also down 1 billion points and is just embarrassing herself every step of the way the longer she stays in this race. Now, I want to welcome to the program joining me, Eric July, Blaze TV contributor and founder and owner of Ripaverse Comics. Eric, am I being, well, maybe you're not allowed to say, because you're a man. And so you're not allowed to say these things. But honestly, the more... when I make statements like this, that women, generally speaking, women are not fit to be president because they are too emotionally expressive than men. They cannot regulate their emotions as well as men can. It's overwhelmingly women who agree with me on this. I feel like men are like, I'm not saying that. I'm not allowed to say that. And it's women who are like, yeah, you're right. And I watch Nikki Haley on stage and I'm just like, this is offensive to me. This is offensive to me as a woman that you're going to trot up on stage and stand there. And I'm sorry, I don't believe the tears. So you're going to stand there and cry about your husband being deployed. You didn't seem to care the first time.
Yeah, look, you say it, and
did she want a pity vote? Like, it's like, why?
I'm not sure exactly what she was
sorry
going
for you, so we're going to vote for you.
Potentially, maybe that was the case. Maybe she thought she was going to garner some sort of sympathy vote. But to your point about this, the emotionalism of it all, it is, you hear it said, and I think you worded it perfectly, that generally speaking, men are going to be the ones that feel some kind of way because it's like it's almost a taboo subject. Like, you can't say that. Like you were saying earlier, it's sexist, it's misogynistic, right. It's all of these words, even though biologically speaking, it's just we're wired differently. And I would say that folks that aren't leftists, we apply this subject or we apply this logic to other subject matters.
Right.
As an example, we've been having this conversation about people that are born men competing with women in sports. And we recognize...
Which, by the way, we're going to talk about later on.
Right. Which we recognize that there's a differentiation.
Right.
For whatever reason, though, when you start getting to the emotion aspect of it all, which is, I'd argue, even more so true, that we are just wired naturally. Yes, you're going to have some differentiation between different women, of course.
Right.
But generally speaking, women are going to be more emotional. Those of us that are married, we understand that especially. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because that aids you in other things, particularly like with caretaking, which, we look at that being more of a woman's job. I hate that it's the conversation has become so much of a taboo subject that we have to ignore reality.
Right. And I, by the way, I want to make sure it's clear. I know that people who have been watching me for a while, this isn't news to them that I feel this way, but I just want to be clear. I'm not saying this to be offensive. I'm not saying this to I'm not saying this to degrade my fellow woman. I'm not saying it for any other reason than I genuinely, truly believe it because I've seen the science. And to your point, Eric, on the trans issue, everyone on our side is willing to agree that men and women are different and that we have major differences. So I just don't understand why that doesn't extend to emotion.
I'll tell you why. Because this really is a conversation. It's happening among race as well. And I don't want to call it propaganda, but this concept of equality. We've heard this term thrown around since we were young, and we generally look at it like it's a positive thing. As the great Thomas Sowell once said, the same man isn't even equal to himself on different day. It's a pipe dream. It's not a reality. It's not anything that is legitimate. However, it is something that we strive for. Now, when I say we, I'm talking just like even as a nation, as a society, as more of a culture. This is why people are so obsessed with like different like disparities that exist in a human affair. well, this race isn't represented in this affair, or the gender makeup isn't proportionate to what the population is. And that's just asinine of a concept to even consider when you do talk about the fact that we are different. And I think each individual inherently understands this. But again, when I say the propaganda works, I mean, we're almost wired to not think like we naturally are supposed to, because everybody's equal, right? Everybody's the same. Everybody can do this. Everybody can do that. And the reality is that's just not the case. Or we're just wired a little differently. And there's nothing wrong with that. I see that as a beautiful thing, right? Because we are individuals at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I'll give you one last thought on that. Just to reiterate, we are emotional, more emotional, generally speaking, as women. We are also much more emotionally manipulative, which I would not call a beautiful thing, but it just is the way that it is. So I want to get into the presidential race on the other side of the ballot. Over the weekend, Democrat Senator Bob Casey was asked by an ABC anchor how can Joe Biden prove to the American people that he hasn't, lost all his marbles yet? And Bob Casey was basically like, what are you talking about? Things are going great. Watch.
What would you have Joe Biden do to make the case that he's not an elderly, well-meaning gentleman, that he's somebody who's really driving the car?
Well, I think his record demonstrates that, and I think people are going to see it in the campaign. Look, campaigns are about reporting back to the people about what you've been doing and what you want to do. It's kind of a report and also a forward-looking what you're going to do to lower costs or continue to do, as the president and I and others have done. What you're going to do to make sure there's security at the border. That's why we supported this bipartisan deal.
It's been open for 3 years.
But look, I don't think there's going to be a moment where there's going to be a videotape that proves something.
Who wants to tell him? Who wants to tell him? Who wants to tell him? You know what I did today when I saw that? I went back and was watching Biden gaffes, and there was one with 25 minutes worth. And I was like, well, I can't play all of the video evidence. There's too much to play. So we at least compiled some of this video evidence. If someone could please get these videos to Bob Casey so he can see there's plenty of video evidence to suggest that Joe Biden is literally half dead. We have Weekend at Bernie's president. That would be great. Let's watch some of Joe Biden's gaffes. Watch.
Let's go lick the world. We cheer for Muslim athletes like Kareem and Joan Shingang. I'm going to pronounce
what?
Shanga Kawawa. Ban on transgender Americans.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
This is so good.
Thank you.
And there he
Don't
goes.
go anywhere. It's a very exciting day around here. We'll have reaction.
I met alone with him, just he and I, and a simultaneous interpreter 68 times, 68 hours, 68 times, more than 68 hours.
What?
All right. God save the Queen, man.
That will get you every time.
What? Sir, it's this way.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We really appreciate it, and we love you. Thank you.
I might add, if I didn't, I'd be sleeping alone.
What? Uh-oh.
More than half of the women in my administration are women.
Half the women.
100.
That's probably accurate, though.
Yeah. Uh-oh, there he goes. Oh, this one is so good. All right, Joe Biden trying to put on his jacket. Jill's trying to help him. Nope, can't find the sleeve. Okay, all right, we're good. We found the sleeve. Okay. All right, so now we're walking. And we're walking. And, oh, there go the glasses. Then that is just... And, of course, this is my favorite, actually. The bike. Oh, down he goes. Down goes Joe.
Class.
Please, someone please get this to Bob Casey. Please. And the sad part is, Eric, that's just a small compilation. Like I said, there were so many videos I couldn't even, I'm not going through a 25-minute video of gaffes, but I know that they're all true and they're all there.
Well, here's the thing about Joe Biden, okay? He's been in the public sphere for a very long time, like an extremely long time.
Way longer than anyone should be.
Yes, for sure. Longer than I have, or you, or anybody probably here has been alive. Yeah. He's been in the public sphere. So we've got to see him when he did have it all upstairs, right? That's a different man. I would encourage the American people, go out there, go watch some of those old videos out there of Joe Biden just speaking. He's in a different world right now.
He used to be able to complete sentences.
Yes, he used to be able to complete sentences. He was really able to think on his feet. That's no more. You could see half the time he has no idea where he's going. And now everybody is watching this man seemingly to figure out what the next gaffe is going to be, because we know that he doesn't got it all upstairs. So if we just compare himself to himself, we know that, this man ain't got it all upstairs. He don't.
Well, apparently Democrats' philosophy is just tell the American people, don't believe your lying eyes. All right, believe us. We're telling you he looks great. Everything's going super great. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick break. We're going to be back with more, but first we want to thank our sponsor this segment, Preborn. So I don't know if you guys realize this. A baby's heartbeat, their heart begins to beat at sometimes as little as just 3 weeks. And unfortunately, the left is selling these women who are scared. They get pregnant and they're scared. They're selling these women lies and telling them it's just a clump of cells. Don't worry about it. It's not actually a human life. And the thing that is so great about Preborn, if you guys have not heard of Preborn is actually, they have a network of clinics that are right next to oftentimes these Planned Parenthoods where all of these women are being lied to about that just being a clump of cells. But what Preborn does is so important. Elizabeth Warren would be like, these crisis pregnancy centers are lying to these women. No, actually, they're just literally showing them the truth. They're showing them an ultrasound. They're letting them listen to their baby's heartbeat. And these women, oftentimes they hear it and they see their baby on the monitor, and it's like a life-changing moment. If you're a parent, you know this. The first time that you went in and saw the ultrasound and saw and listened to the heartbeat, it truly is life-changing. And oftentimes they are more likely to choose life. So Preborn, $28. You can sponsor an ultrasound that will double a baby's chance at life. I'm just asking. I know things are tight right now with everyone, but this is such a great cause. They're literally saving babies, and you can help by going to preborn.com/Sarah. Donate securely over at preborn.com/Sarah. All right, joining the panel, we have Jaco Booyens, Blaze TV contributor, and of course, founder of Jaco Booyens Ministries, also host of The Bottom Line. You wear a lot of hats, Jaco. Yeah. I don't know how you find the time to do what you do, but I'm glad that you're joining us for this next story, especially because...
Good to be with you and good to be with
yes.
this brother.
Yes, especially because this next, I want to talk about the border, which you are no stranger to. In fact, I would call you an expert on what's happening at the border.
Maybe?
But he's more of a border czar than Kamala Harris.
Hey, I don't want to self-grandize, but that's not hard to do.
Yeah, that's fair. It is a very low bar.
You just got to actually show up to the border one time and you beat Kamala.
I don't know. I mean, I talk about it way more than her. I feel like I'd be a better border czar than she is.
We should just call her Chameleon.
We should. Yeah. So at the border, Governor Greg Abbott here in Texas on Friday announced that the state is building an 80-acre base camp in Eagle Pass for Texas National Guard soldiers who are deployed over there for Operation Lone Star, which is the $10 billion state effort to deter people from immigrating into Texas illegally. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this, gentlemen, but I want to play a little bit of Governor Abbott's announcement. Watch.
To expand our border security capabilities, we are building a new Texas Military Department base camp that allows the Texas National Guard to increase and to improve operations in this area. What you see now is the first stage of construction has already begun on what is 80 acres of an area to be built out for this base camp. From your camera view, it goes all the way down the edge of here to those trees, all the way to the back, close to where the river is. On this side, just back behind you, about 50 feet, is where it stops. This will increase the ability for a larger number of Texas Military Department personnel in Eagle Pass to operate more effectively and more efficiently.
So it's housing up to 2,300 troops. They're going to have individual rooms. They're going to have a 700-person dining facility, on-site movie theaters, workout areas, medical services, the whole gamut. And look, I'm going to ask you first, Yaku, because maybe I'm too cynical because this is, I'm like this deep in all things, border and Texas politics and national politics, and I'm just tired of the smoke and mirrors. But from what I have seen, not coming out from Greg Abbott's office, what I have seen is that Operation Lone Star hasn't really been working. And it kind of seems like we're being sold this grand idea that Texas is defending the entire border, and really it's just this minuscule part that's just for optics. And this just feels gross to me. Am I being too cynical in that?
No, not at all. You're tapping into what's called women's intuition and just common sense, and your eyes don't deceive you. And so I'll say this, the notion that look, I should preface it with this. I'm always for taking care of our servicemen and servicewomen, okay? But Greg Abbott, if you want to take care of them, how about you stop the suicide rate? How about you give them some mental health support? How about you give them a chaplain, which they don't have? How about you give their family support for the family so that the husband goes to the work in the morning? And 2 weeks ago, another officer took his own life. That's not because he didn't have a bed or a mess hall or a movie theater. He stays there. He lives there. His family lives there. It's because you've abandoned him on the border. You make him do things he didn't sign up for. He wants to defend this country. And now you buy optics, pure optics, 100% optics. Somebody should tell Greg Abbott there are other points of the border. You don't just have to go to Eagle Pass. That's his spot. That's where he put his shipping containers down. That's where he put the Humvees with no engines in them. Then they put engines in them because we lifted the hoods, and now he's building a facility.
Kidding.
100%. I'll show you the video footage. The Humvees did not have engines in them.
That's what I'm talking about with the optics. It's like a $10 billion
video footage.
$10 billion
Humvees
effort.
looking at Piedras Negras across the border with no engines in them, with a cat living in the hood of the Humvee.
Wow.
Okay, now at least they have motors in them. It's optics. Abbott is optics. This is his thing. Cameras, microphones. Look at what I'm building. Lone Star has been a disaster from day one. It's a waste of money. Yes, take care of the servicemen and women. Get them some emotional help because you've pushed them over the edge by making them abandon their country, which they signed up to defend.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, it's just like more taxpayer money siphoned into something that seems to just be for optics. And then on top of that, I do agree. I respect men and women who serve, but on-site movie theaters seems a little much for taxpayers to pay for, especially when you consider the $10 billion we're already paying for what seems to just be smoke and mirrors.
Brother, sorry. Take some of the money and turn the cameras in Hudspeth County that's on the border on, because they've been off for 2.5 years. The cameras aren't even turned on.
Wow.
So these are the things, right? That's still Texas border, 1,254 miles of Texas border. Let's build a gym. No, let's not build a gym.
Yeah.
Turn the cameras on.
Well, and by the way, I also do want to say I appreciate the argument. I appreciate the fact that this has pushed the Biden administration into a corner. Like I appreciate the small stance. I want to give credit where credit is due. The fact that we are now going to get to argue at the Supreme Court whether or not Texas has the ability to enforce their own border, and does Texas have, sovereign borders, is obviously something that needs to be discussed at the highest level of the courts. But I don't feel comfortable giving Abbott all of the credit to say like, oh, look, he's doing this great program and Operation Lone Star has been a complete success. And on top of that, we're going to spend money on this giant facility for these people, when in actuality, I think we're being sold a lie. And I just want to make sure the American people understand that.
Look, I think I totally empathize with people that want to see this come to some sort of resolution, right? With that being said, particularly with Texas, I think what's happening here, and this is just, we'll talk about intuition, just me kind of calling it for what it is and the way that I see it, is this is the inevitable. And that is that actually going to solve the problem means that there's going to have to be a conflict with the federal government. I don't personally think Abbott, I don't personally think the National Guard, not to say that they aren't prepared to deal with it. I just think they don't want to have to come to terms with that reality, because then we have to have, especially publicly, another conversation. And that's a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a very, 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 very long time. It's like, okay, who is best suited? I say it on the show all the time. Who's best suited to deal with Texas's problems? Texas is best suited to deal with Texas's problems. However, there are rules, laws even, in play that do not allow them to effectively do what needs to be done. Right. More importantly, there's a lot of wasted resources that are being directed, let's say, to the federal government to deal with the issue, which then puts it out of your hands, or rather you're not equipped to have to actually deal with the problem, right? And then everybody's looking to the federal government to resolve it. But what happens when they don't? You're left unprepared, and the issue is still the issue. So this is what the American people, I think, they have to understand. I think Abbott, he knows it, right? And people around him know it. They just don't want to have to deal with it. If you want to truly deal with this problem, you're going to have to be in a conflict with the federal government. Bottom line, it sounds like it's probably watching a show. Oh my God, we can't. That's the reality. The federal government ain't dealing with it, so you got to deal with it. They don't want you to deal with it, though. It makes them look bad. It more so lends credence to independence. That's not what it is that they want, but that is the inevitable. Do you want the problem to be resolved, or do we just want to sit here and talk about it all day long? Yeah. In order for it to get resolved, you're going to have to go to conflict with that absolute mammoth. And I think it's less of a mammoth and more of a paper tiger, because I think they're full of crap. Because at the end of the day, if you did want to start prioritizing Texans and their problems over the United States government and how they want to deal with it, I don't think there's much they can do, or much they will do, for that matter.
Yeah. Just another quick note on that before we have to go to break. Apparently, the number of Chinese illegal immigrants crossing the southern border has skyrocketed by 4,000% just since 2021.
And you have to ask yourself why.
Correct. Exactly.
Got to ask why.
Right, because...
Why are they all single males?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Military age.
Mm-hmm. Not just from China, but from...
And then you look into Africa a little bit and you go, oh, wait a minute, they've done this before. Mm-hmm. They built literally what they called man camps. So many went in. Lagos, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Namibia, South Africa, that they had to build camps for these guys, and it was takeover time. So just wake up.
And
wake up.
By the way, just as a reminder, maybe this is just a top of mind because we have early voting that started here in Texas, but here in the Texas House, here in Texas, where we have all of these 4,000% increase in Chinese immigrants, illegal immigrants crossing the border. Remember, if they could get here legally, they probably just would. I don't know. They probably just fly in here. So it's weird that they're doing it the harder way. And we still have a Texas legislature who has not banned the CCP from owning Texas land. Just as if you needed a reminder to go out and make sure that you vote here in the primary season, that might be one. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. We're going to be back with more, but I want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So Relief Factor is there for those of you if you're living in constant pain. Whatever the pain is, it's like knee pain, neck pain, back pain, whatever that case may be. It's most likely the inflammation in your body that is causing that pain. And if you could just get rid of the inflammation, you get rid of the root cause of the problem. It's worked for me. It's worked for Yaku's mom. And it started working how soon?
For her, 3 days.
It's incredible. And the thing is like there are so many people who have that same story. They're like, within days, I could feel a difference. So here's what Relief Factor says. Okay, go to their website, get the 3-week quick start. You will know within those 3 weeks. It may happen within days, like Yaku's mom had that happen to, but It will work within 3 weeks if it's going to work for you. And by the way, the odds are in your favor that it will, because more than 70% of the people who order that 3-week quick start go on to keep ordering it. That's how many people are saying, this is working for me. It's gotten me out of my pain and it's been life-changing. You can order that at relieffactor.com. That is relieffactor.com. So I don't know if you guys saw this. Tucker Carlson had a discussion with censorship expert Mike Benz. And according to Benz, I don't think this is going to shock you guys, but I'm going to tell you anyway. There was a concerted effort starting in April of 2020 made by a coalition involving DHS, NATO, the DNC, and other entities to launch a mass censorship campaign across all social media platforms. And they aimed to preemptively censor any disputes over the legitimacy of mail-in ballots. So this was, 7 months before the election. They knew what they were going to do. They knew that it would be discussed. They knew that people would question it. And so they preemptively wanted to make sure that you were not allowed to talk about this. So he described these entities as Pentagon cutouts, suggesting obviously they were operating under the direction of the Pentagon to carry out this censorship campaign by professionals who he says were experts in color revolutions. And there were potentially hundreds of millions of posts that were throttled. Particularly, again, you guys you're not looking at me like you're shocked, but I need you to put on your shocked face that these posts questioning the security of mail-in ballots were among those that were censored. And this is kind of an explanation of how they did that. Watch.
They explicitly said on tape that they were set up to do what the government was banned from doing itself. And then they articulated a multi-step framework in order to coerce all the tech companies to take censorship actions they said on tape the tech companies would not have done but for their pressure, which involved using threats of government force because they were the deputized arm of the government. They had a formal partnership with the DHS. They were able to use DHS's proprietary domestic disinformation switchboard to immediately talk to top brass at all the tech companies for takedowns. And they bragged on tape about how they got the tech companies to all systematically adopt a new terms of service speech violation ban called delegitimization, which meant any tweet, any YouTube video, any Facebook post, any TikTok video, any Discord post, any Twitch video, anything on the internet that undermined public faith and confidence in the use of mail-in ballots or early voting drop boxes or ballot tabulation issues on election day was a prima facie terms of service violation policy under this new delegitimization policy, in which by their own math had 22 million tweets on Twitter alone. And mind you, they did this on 15 platforms. So this is hundreds of millions of posts, which were all scanned and banned or throttled so that they could not be amplified, or they existed in a sort of limited state purgatory, or had these frictions affixed to them in the form of fact-checking labels where you couldn't actually click through the thing, or you had to, it was an inconvenience to be able to share it.
So I think that we just got a line in to how that fortification occurred. Because, I mean, remember, they admitted that there was a fortification that happened. We could argue over the semantics or how you want to call it. I guess you can't say stolen. I'm wondering now as we're talking if the little January or if the 2020 election little signage is going to be on this particular program now on YouTube, because, you're not allowed to talk about that without getting some sort of Wikipedia correction. But how many times do they just get to tell us to our faces, this is all an illusion, this is all a mirage, the game is rigged, the fix is in, before we actually do something about it? I'm just wondering.
Look, that doesn't at all surprise me.
Yeah.
I think that this is something that probably has happened a lot longer than we've caught on to it, and that is that the government basically being used to coerce private institutions to do their own bidding, right? So you get this merge of corporate and state, and there's another term for that as well, with a guy out of Italy and what it was that he was doing, and it's called fascism. That's what it actually means. It's not guy that I don't like doing bad thing. No, that's not what fascism is. It's talking about merging of corporate and state, and that's more or less what it is that you got. But this is how the government, I think operates, which is why I think that it's important to, when we use these terms like definitely like privatization and all that, I think we should be very, very careful with what it is that we're actually talking about. That back when I used to be in the trenches going back and forth with leftists on various topics, this is one of the things that I'd always would try to explain. Like, okay, yeah, maybe they exist as a private institution, but at what level is the state influencing their decision making, right? And if the state is influencing their decision making, whether it be directly, whether it be like by way of subsidizing it or coercing, like what we were just talking about, that's not private enterprise at all. That's the state being creative, maybe, to get the private institutions to do what it is that they want them to do. And that is extraordinarily dangerous. I think we have seen, and maybe we'll look back on this later on when Elon got X, right? And how much just the general conversation has changed altogether on social media, where it is one platform. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's perfect, but it is a platform where I feel like far less likely now to be banned, right, for saying something that is mildly controversial, right? And that may change the game and just in general on how we actually converse about not just elections, but anything that happened. We know that they're already in the cahoots. Speaking of X, that's what the Twitter files showed us. We already know that that's the thing. This is just further proof of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Look, whenever you see a unilateral implementation of a strategy in a culture, right, such as COVID, that's the world. It's impossible for private sector to do that. Because private sector is too competitive. Private sector don't typically work together. Coca-Cola competes with Pepsi, Pepsi with Dr. Pepper, Dr. Pepper with Coca-Cola. So it's segregated by default by competition. When you get a unilateral implementation of a thinking, government is involved. Yeah. 100%. Now, what government does is they mask it, as you said, through PPP, public-private practice, right? But it's government. It's government in January 6th. It's government in COVID. It's government in Russia collusion. It's government in censoring people. It's the government. It's the DOJ. It's the DOD. It's the FBI. It's the CIA. It's the FBI weaponized against us. It's the CIA operating on domestic soil, which they're not supposed to. So it's easy to see, because when it becomes proliferated like that and the media all starts talking, it's government's involved, because it's not nature to the private sector. Right. They don't work that way. Right. You don't see Pepsi one day go, you know what, we agree with Coca-Cola. We're going to have polar bears in our campaign. This is not how private sector works. It's the government working with the leaders in private sector saying, you will dance, because remember, we got you here. Remember that deal you got to... So it's government. So it's actually quite easy to see.
Yeah, and I want to be clear here. I'm not trying to discourage people from. I don't want people to walk away from this thinking, well, I mean, what's the point of going to go vote because my vote doesn't matter? Shut up, Eric. Don't even look at me, Eric. Okay.
We have to.
I am not trying to encourage anyone to stay home. Yeah, that's kind of my point. Is the opposite, which is
Triple down.
We have to show up en masse. They didn't account for Donald Trump having the turnout that he did when he ran against Hillary Clinton. I mean, they tried to fix it. They just didn't anticipate the overflow of people who were showing up to vote for Donald Trump. So I don't think that it's impossible, but it is going to take all of us. And it is going to take specifically the people who in the primary process are not happy that like their person didn't make it all the way through. It's going to take all of us to defeat the radical left. I know there are some people who are not aligned in that. I know there are some people who think that Joe Biden would be the same or better than Donald Trump. I personally cannot agree with that assessment. I cannot. And I don't think that it's reasonable. And I don't think that it's logical, but that's just me. I'm just speaking for me. So I am encouraging you guys. I don't want you to feel discouraged. Please go out. Please. Please go out and vote. Vote early and vote often. Just kidding. We're not Democrats. All right. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Got something to say? Leave Sara a message at 888-969-5113.
I have a feeling that this next conversation is not going to make the overlords over at a particular platform very happy. So if we lose you, make sure you can tune in to the full episode over at blazetv.com, or you can find the segment that you missed over at Rumble in its entirety. Just want to throw that out there. Not sure how far we're going to get here, but a high school girls basketball game ended in a forfeit at halftime after 3 girls suffered injuries in a matchup against a team that reportedly includes a player who is 6 feet tall and has facial hair. And I just want to, I think you guys are not going to be able to spot. So let's play Where's Waldo here on who the culprit actually is. Watch. Wow. Unbelievable. And shockingly, doesn't seem to care at all. Look at a press release was issued by the team that said once the 3rd player was injured, the remaining 5 expressed concern to the coach about continuing to play. They feared getting injured and not being able to compete in the playoffs. And of course, the school refused to take a stand, saying the charter school supports this decision and reiterates its values of both inclusivity and safety for all students. We take the standards set by the MIAA and our board of trustees seriously and strive to uphold them, blah, 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 blah. So I want to make sure that I'm careful with my words here, because the young girls are not to blame, so to speak. But they do have the solution, which is stop competing with. If you see a on the other team who is 6 feet tall and towers over you and clearly has more muscle mass than you, because yes, there are differences between men and women, going back to our original conversation. If you see that, just say no. I don't understand why. Again, it's not their fault, but like, there is no world in which I would allow, if I had a daughter, I would never allow her to play against a 6 foot. I just wouldn't.
Yeah. So Sarah, look, I agree with you wholeheartedly, fully. Where are their dads? Where are the girls' dads?
That's a great question.
Where are the girls' fathers? You know where they should have been? On the court. On the court.
I know.
You step onto the court, you shut the game down, you stop the game from coming, and let the other dads come meet us on the court. If you're the father of this...
Well, we talked about it a little bit before, but things are not going well for Grandpa Joe. They already put the short steps up for Air Force One. They changed it out because he kept tripping, and apparently the short stairs are not helping. And so here we are today. He's shuffling along, and he just twice there, could not make it even up the short steps without tripping. And I want to reiterate this here. I would understand if it was going down, because I have fallen down my own stairs. I think every member of my household has fallen down the stairs once. It's almost impressive to trip up the stairs and do it with such a frequency that Joe Biden does.
He does it a lot. Like, and it's always funny watching him try to do that little light jog up it, and then he'll fall or he'll stumble and then try to like almost like speed up like that or somehow help the situation. It's weird stuff.
Look, falling down is what it's called. Falling up is quite different.
Well, that right there is the definition of vigor.